We had very much looked forward to the idea of retirement and transition, and so when the time came to request uh, retirement, transfer to Fleet Reserve, it was kind of like, yay, all right, good. And then so we were, the big build up and the excitement, and it's like, okay, this is a great new chapter. Uh, but when the message came back approving me for transfer to Fleet Reserve, it very quickly transitioned from yay to oh no, now what? Because we weren't 100% sure what the now what was going to be. So it transitioned to some fear and intimidation on the whole idea.
Yeah, I think we were really excited, and at that point in the career, I feel like I was just done. I was just, we need to do something else now. And so I was really excited that he was going to put in his retirement paperwork. But then when the message came back, I was like, oh crap. Now what? Now what are we supposed to do? What is he supposed to do? And how are we going to survive financially after not having that military pay anymore? So that was a big shock. So there's a lot of things that happen while you're going through the transition for the service member. There's a lot of medical appointments, just appointments in general. Your schedule kind of becomes just going to different appointments. So we had started using, and I was working full-time at the time, so we started using our calendar app on our phone, and then we would highlight when the other person needed to be at a meeting. So if Sean had a VA appointment, which I would suggest if you can go to all of the VA appointments, the medical appointments, because as a spouse you remember things that the service member doesn't, such as major surgeries that, like in our case, that he didn't even remember. He's like, oh yeah, I forgot I had that knee surgery. But beyond that, it was like he would color code it, so I would know when I got the invite that it was just something he had to go to, or if it was something that I needed to go to as well. And that helped me accommodate with my work schedule. And then if I had something going on with work where I had travel or something like that, I would color code it so that when he received the invite that something was going on, he would know that I was not available during that time and he had to be with the kids or completely available to handle the family as well as what he was going through. So that was the biggest tool, and we still use that tool now, which has been probably one of the best things we've ever done for our family to keep us somewhat organized.
And then we also, as far as communication, we had to make a very concerted effort to have face-to-face time to just talk about our transition and what was going on, because there were things that, as diligent as we were with the calendar on our phones, there's still gaps in it. You can't put all the details or all the thoughts or this is what I'm worried about, which was huge as well once I got to a point and admitted that I was pretty significantly scared about what was going on. That those face-to-face moments, whether it was at the dinner table like on a nightly basis or once a week, we really tried hard to specifically get away from all the distractions, so the girls would stay home, or we would try and, a date night. It was good for us just as a relationship thing, but also it really helped clear up any of the little pieces, the questions that came up when we weren't together, because you're still active duty, you're still full-time working, you're still doing all those things, and a lot of those questions don't come up when you're sitting there having a purposeful conversation. So maybe even keeping a notebook in your pocket to write.
I think we try to do as much as we could to kind of have open conversations with our kids on what it was going to look like. I remember like our youngest Cooper, she became like overnight daddy's girl because suddenly daddy was home all the time, and she's still, as you can see, very much daddy's girl. But as far as Maddie was concerned, and our oldest Isabella, who's off in college now, we try to have like regular dinner conversations about like the changes going on in the family. What were they feeling about that, and we'll let Maddie talk about how she felt about the transition. But just like we try to be as open and honest as we could, because there's some things that were definitely stressing us out that we know that they could feel. So that's really what we did, and then we just really focused on a lot of family time, like before. While Sean was on his terminal leave and before he started school, like just really trying to do as many things as we could as a family to kind of just like reconnect you know, that's all we could do to try to help the.
I guess I'll lead off that one just as being, you know, so I went from active duty on sea duty, and while I wasn't deploying, it was getting people ready for deployment, working in the culture, the military culture. You know, I'm surrounded by all these young individuals, you know, that in my world were highly motivated. Sometimes it was a lot more trying to slow them down, slow their roll when they were going towards things, rather than trying to push them into doing work or doing tasks and things like that. And excuse me. And then going to a graduate program, even though it's a graduate program, everybody in the program already had their bachelor's, and I was surprised that things that I would hear, you know, going to class, it was, you know, kid, and to me, I guess they were still kids. I was certainly the oldest one in the room a lot of the time, but just the prioritization of what was going on, whether it was like, oh, even just coming to class, and it was only one night a week for the master's program, but they would go to a concert instead of coming to class that one night a week, and that really bugged me. So that was just within the graduate program, but even when I found employment and was working in the school setting during staff meetings, it was there were some things that really caught me off guard. You know, I was used to, you know, there was a staff meeting and we're sitting in there, and if it was a meeting in the military, you're just like, well, we're here until the meeting's over. Whoever's holding the meeting, when they say, okay, now you can all go, we would all go. And while maybe mentally you're like, oh man, I hope we get out of here soon or something like that, it was not so much a mental conversation going on. There were open conversations and sidebars going on within the staff room that, you know, somebody had the union contract on their computer and would reference it. It's like, oh, they can only keep us to this point or something like that. And it was just very different, and I only experienced that right kind of within the last month of the school year, and I was like, oh wow, that was new. And you know, having been transitioned for a year and a half or more, I was like, wow, I hadn't run into that one yet. But so there's definitely a cultural shift, but in a lot of ways, the mental perspective I had as 25 years in the military, and all civilians are lazy, or they're not motivated, or there's going to be discipline issues and all that stuff. I really, as much as I just complained about the kids in my college class, or you know, those couple of staff members, it's a small percentage. I was really happy with who I encountered. I met a ton of really very professional people and good friends and good colleagues and that kind of stuff too. So being on deployment, complaining about civilians when we got back, they weren't as bad as I expected. But there's a distinct shift, but
yeah, for sure. I would also add to that, like in the family culture is different. So one of the things that when we found out, when we got our orders, knowing that we were going to start retirement, that process, we kind of immediately started seeking non-military friends, because at the time we knew we were going to stay in San Diego, at least for a while, and so we knew like our military friendships were going to change drastically because we weren't part of that crowd anymore. And then, you know, of course, their orders were going to come up and they were going to start transitioning on. So it was like, okay, well, we have to like figure out what our friend base looks like here for our family, and that's for couples friends for us, and then for our kids and that kind of stuff. So we did make a concerted effort to look for civilian friends, which is not easy. Finding civilian friends is that you can relate to is not easy, because just, you know, our mentalities are slightly different in how we handle every situation come up. And for me, you know, knowing that with Sean being coming and going all the time, it was like our lifestyle. So I don't have a lot of empathy for somebody who has a husband that might go away for a couple of days for a business trip and then come back and they're like, oh, I'm a single parent. And I'm like, you have no idea what that really means, you know? So, you know, so that's been a little bit of a struggle, I think, for us, like as a family. And now we're making a major transition ourselves. So we've come to the end of our time here in San Diego. And so we're gonna, I don't know why I'm crying, I'm sorry. but
It's
we're
here
gonna
for
move.
once, though.
We're moving our family now back to my home state of Michigan, and there's no military there. And I think out of this whole thing, that's the hardest part, is that we still find comfort just going to the base and doing our shopping, and just being around others that are in the military. It's a family, even if we don't know each other. And we won't have that anymore. So give yourself the time to feel all the feels. It's bittersweet. Do the retirement ceremony. Have that closure. I remember during our retirement ceremony, we did the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle, which is something that's very outside of Sean's comfort zone typically. Just to see the amount of people that showed to send him off was just overwhelming. Gosh, I am an emotional mess today. Yeah, I'm so sorry. So give yourself that moment. And then after, as you're going through it, just really try to talk to each other. You know, your spouse isn't your enemy. You don't have to take all of this on yourself and, you know, get your family through it. You know, it's okay to lean on one another. And you know, you kind of forge a new friendship in your marriage, I think, in doing that. Like, we have a trust that I feel at this point is unbreakable. You know, there's not much, and I felt like we were a strong couple already, but now I feel like having gone through this and coming out the other side and now going through another transition, it's really important. That communication side is just really important. Take time to get away from the kids and just focus on your marriage, because it's stressful. And there's going to be little stupid things that come up that you're going to argue about, and you don't want that to build up. You need to just, like, even if you have a little tiff about it, still get that time together to talk and to connect to one another. Maddie, do you have anything for kids?
Just try to stay out of trouble, basically. Because you know it's stressful on your parents or your guardians. So I mean, it's not. They shouldn't not pay attention to you, but you shouldn't have to give them a reason to pay attention to you for a bad reason. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So this is the part where I'll probably have the issues is, one, the fact that we're talking to a room filled with spouses, and hopefully the active duty members are there as well, is huge. As much as you know, it seems like it's broadcast that, you know, as a spouse, attend the TGPS class or whatever your version is called, to go and be there with the active duty member. As Marla had said before, the VA appointments, you're an extra set of ears and eyes and another brain that can think of really important questions to ask, things that the service member doesn't remember, or vice versa. So you back each other up is enormous. And so, you know, the fact that you're in this room right now, hopefully you're both there as a couple. Maybe you have your kids with you, and that's awesome. So keep supporting each other just like that. As the active duty person, hopefully give each other grace, because the stress involved can be immense, and there's two families involved in many cases. Your family at home, but for the active duty member, they're leaving a military family as well. The people that they've deployed with, you know, faced losses with, or whatever it might be. All the good things too. It's hard to leave them behind, and as an active duty member, and even 2 years gone by, there's still that feeling that you leave one family behind, you know, to the benefit of the other family. So it can be hard, you know, you're finishing out your career and you still have to stay and do those late hours, and you know that you're missing something important that your kids are doing, a recital or a game or a date night that you had to scrub because something came up at work. That stuff will still happen. And then you're going to feel torn as well, because after the fact, that ship will leave port without you. You may still watch the clock, because you know the flight schedule is usually done, and you're waiting to make sure that all your kids made it home safe. So so just give each other grace, because sometimes that isn't clear at first, but through communication, if you're truthful with each other and you talk about your fears, that can come out in the wash, and then you can, you know, to borrow from other services, your battle buddy is there to make sure that you're okay.